Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome. This is the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode 81. We're going to talk a little bit today about hay yields, early hay yields this spring, and fertilizer application and its sort of interaction. I'm Morgan Hayes, an assistant professor in Biosystems and Ag Engineering here at the University of Kentucky, focusing on livestock facilities. In my personal life, I farm in Boyle County, Kentucky, with my husband, a commercial cattle and hay operation.
And I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Biosystems and Agriculture Engineering as well, where I focus on precision livestock farming. In my personal life, we have registered Angus cattle, some goat production, and also some hay production as well.
Okay, Josh. So let's talk a little bit about what's been happening on the farm. Busy couple weeks, lots happening. This is the time of year when there's always a bunch happening.
I mean, we got so much on our to-do list. We're kind of swamped at this point. So of our 5,000 foot of fence that we need to do, we have about 1,200 foot of the line of about 1,200 foot of post in, and so we're pretty much ready to slap up some braces and then throw up some wire on about 1,200 foot of it. So
hey. That's a good start.
That is a good start. So we got that started. We have a lot of hay baled that we still need to move. And then we also started, the kids have started their shows. So we spent part of the weekend, just shearing sheep, getting them ready to go. So, all the other little stuff that in addition to the primary function, you got at the secondary.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens, especially.
And so, still moving cows. So I got to figure out this weekend because in essence, all of our perimeter fence has been taken out. And so, to put it mildly, a lot of our perimeter fence has been taken out. So figuring out where the cows go from here has been going to be another challenge.
Sure, that'd be a reason to slap up some fence. 1,200 foot of fence might help get you another field or two.
Yeah, so we're going to slap up some fence and do what we can to kind of keep things going.
I understand. Yeah, we are doing good. We're rotating animals. We're trying to find a balance point right now. We're getting ready for bulls to go in. We did our BSE, our breeding soundness exams on the bulls. Fortunately, they all passed and nobody was so nasty that they had to leave the farm. That was good.
Yep.
So now we're just balancing out the groups with the grass, because right now we are heavier on one side than the other, so that two bulls will be on one group and one bull on the other group. But ideally, they would be split evenly to match the grass stand.
Okay.
So we may end up having to move a couple cows back and forth, or move some cows to balance the groups, and then spike one of those bulls back and forth or something like that. We have to figure out that. But that's sort of a balance, because otherwise we end up with like 40 and 20, and that's 40 and 20 is okay. Yeah. It's just that the grass is designed for 30 on both farms. So so we have to figure how we're going to do that. But we'll figure that part out. That's just
we'll just have to increase the rotational frequency, maybe fertilize a little bit, or
we have some fertilizer on some of that pasture ground, but the one thing we don't want is to underutilize grass.
Oh, yes.
We don't want to mow down grass if we don't have to. And I don't necessarily want to put up hay in some of the pasture fields.
Okay, so it's not like one field where you can have a kind of dual use of hay.
It might be that's what we're going to have to do, but we'll have to figure that out. Fortunately, with this rain, I think we might survive overstocking at 40, where I would like the farm to be closer to 30. Okay. I think the farm might actually handle it this year. We did put some extra nitrogen down, some fertilizer down on that pasture ground, knowing that was going to be heavily stocked this year. So hopefully it can keep up.
Okay.
That's the goal. Might mean splitting some fields to be more efficient in our grazing. There could be a couple things that happen, but that's happening. Other than that, we are also planning out some fencing projects. I'd like some more pens for my alpaca. I'd like to be able to rotate them, and in order to do that, I need to set up a little bit more semi-permanent, semi-temporary fencing to create some rotation for them.
Some more high-tensile fencing, you think, or just some?
I will probably do some multi-wire temporary fencing to start with.
Okay.
I might eventually move it into some more permanent fence, but For right now, I just want to I want to get a feel for the rotation and the size of the fields that I need. I have 3 cria baby alpaca on the ground right now, so I have 3 lactating females, and then the rest are not. I'd like to be able to split my lactating animals out separate so they get fed a little bit differently. So from a management standpoint, that would be better. I know a lot of people don't have that option, but because of how we raise our cattle and because of our approach, I definitely am one that would lean towards having more small groups.
Yes.
But that means having more fields. So we'll figure that out. It's a priority for the next couple weeks. So I've started laying them out. I've bought some materials. I just have to set up some fence.
Okay. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We did that a lot on our farm as well. We did a lot of temporary 2-strand for the cattle, 2-strand electric fence, and it eventually got replaced and got permanent fencing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of balance that. I mean, some people are a big believer in just using temporary everywhere on the interior. I personally, I have enough things happening. I don't like to always be chasing down and putting up a new temporary fence just because of the day job. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to remember to get in there at night and set up another temporary fence. But I understand that there is a cost effectiveness to also having temporary fence. So
it's a balance.
It is a balancing act, and there's different labor involved in maintaining a permanent fence. So each their own. We're just sort of figuring out what we want. But I think for the initial round, it'll be some temporary fence.
Makes sense. Sometimes more permanent is a little more resilient.
Yep, exactly.
But,
so
the sacrifice must be made.
That's
at
right.
some point. It has to have to figure out what you like and what actually works for them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just figuring out the spacing and stuff like that is going to be a little bit of a trick. So we're working on all those things. Aside from that, it is hay season. We've been cutting, baling, putting up hay. Yep. And this past few days, this week that we're in right now, it's June 7th, the end of the week right now. This week has been pretty wet. The previous week was dry.
Yes.
So both of us had some hay on top of some travel for work, and we declined to do a podcast that week because we were both out of the office a bunch.
Yes, I saw Alex's door. It said "caught hay fever." We're going to be out of the office for the next couple of days. I like that. I was like, I think we all caught hay fever last week when it was 5 days almost of sunshine. So I think a lot of us took advantage of that.
Yeah, it was a good window. I will say that it was a very wet start to the window, though.
Yes.
We went out to try to bale the hay the first day, and it was too wet. And then we went out the second day, and it was dry enough that you could drive through the field. Like, it wasn't that wet, but it was... And the first day, you could drive through the field. I don't want to... But you were going to track the first day.
Yes.
The second day, you were not going to probably track necessarily, but it was still wet on the ground enough that it was going to be challenging to get it to dry. And there is a balancing act. Sometimes you don't want to cut hay if the ground is too wet.
Yeah.
Because you can't get it to dry on the bottom.
Because all that, and you guys have a tedder, so it makes it a little easier.
We do have a tedder, and we did use the tedder. But also, I don't know if you experience this, but hay gets a smell. If the ground is wet, it sours the hay. Yeah. And so you want to be really careful, especially if you're selling hay or, just in general. It's not even that it's bad. It's just it's sour, and animals will be turned off of it if it sours on the ground. So making sure that the ground has the ability to pull that water that's sitting there into the soil, into the plant roots, then respire it back out before you cut it can be a real trick.
Yeah, and it's it's a challenge because if it's evaporating and transpiring, it's evaporating and transpiring right into the hay that you cut, and so
exactly
you're kind of in this self-defeating loop. Essentially,
yeah, you've basically insulated the ground so that it can't dry out. It is a challenge, and it depends on how your swath sits behind your cutter. All those things sort of play a role in it, but we had to wait till the third day was sort of like that sweet spot. So for us, Monday was too wet, Tuesday was too wet. We did a little bit on Tuesday, but Wednesday was the day to cut.
I think we did the bulk of ours Tuesday. I think.
Yeah. Tuesday was just a little bit wet in some of the fields. So some of it was fine, but a lot of it was still a little damp. Wednesday was good. Then what ended up happening is it looked like the window was open through Saturday. Yeah. And then the chance for rain popped up again on Saturday. So we pushed hard on Friday to get everything into a bale. I don't know how you guys did with the hay.
So we cut Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. Yeah, we did some baling Thursday, Thursday evening.
Yeah.
Kind of just getting the cobwebs off, seeing nothing broke on us. We're just making sure.
Yeah.
And then really hit it hard Friday. Pushed hard Friday. Still had some to go, and we're operating on maybe we'll be okay Saturday, and still had some we needed to hit, and so we were able to get most of it up, but we had about 20 acres that got a little missed Saturday, and if it had stopped any point, we'd been fine, but it kept missing, and finally we just had to call it, and it was going to get too casty on us.
Yeah.
And then we had to bail that. It dried up Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get it baled up Sunday and it still had a little more, because it got that little bit of moisture back on it.
Yep.
And then it was a little wetter than I'd like it to be. So we put those bales a little casier, and I just wasn't happy if I had known Monday and Tuesday were going to be for us relatively dry. I would have waited.
Yeah, I know that was the trick. You never know. And
that was the thing. Originally they were predicting, it's going to be like a torrential rain from Monday through Friday, and then it just, Tuesday afternoon it kind of came a good wash. But I was like, we could have definitely baled and had a lot better hay quality.
Yeah.
So we had to gamble, and sometimes you have to make that gamble. Well, unfortunately, not quite right, but we got it up, baled up, and I'm putting that stuff outside and far away from the barn.
There you go. I think that's fair. I think everyone has to find that balance. I will say that I saw someone that had hay down on Tuesday. I went out to Western Kentucky and I saw someone that had hay down, and it poured on Tuesday.
Ooh.
And I was like, that's rough, because that's hay that you're probably not going to get dry very easily, and you can't leave it on the field.
Nope.
It was a thick swat. It would just kill the grass. It will. So it literally has to be baled up at this point. I guess you can bush hog it. People sometimes will bush hog hay that's already been baled, but it is still a lot of biomass to have on a field. So you really have to get it up in some form or fashion. And sometimes you have to bite the bullet a little bit, which stinks, but
that's taking on the chin there.
That is taking it on the chin there. That's what I thought too. I thought, that hurts, because that's a lot of that looked like it would have been good hay if it hadn't gotten rain dumped on it on Tuesday. So
yeah, there's been people, and it's that time of year taking risks. I think you guys, gambled and won. I think early or late April. I think you're able to get
we cut some in late April, and that was good. That hay is about ready to cut again. If we can get done all our other hay, we'll get back to it in time.
That's amazing. So you're able to really increase the productivity and off of that ground, and so. Some people gamble and they cut here, and this is the time of year it's really hard to predict, because 30% can mean either a downpour. We don't know quite what the rain chances mean this time of year. August is like, they talk 30% chance, like no way in heck.
Yep, it's exactly right. Yeah, this is the time of year where 30 and 40 is like, you better be prepared for it to rain a lot. And then as we get further into summer, it's a little bit less that way. And certain years are that way and certain years aren't. So
like 2018, we had 72 inches of rainfall that year, and it's like, that year was. If they said it was going to rain, you were just assuming it was raining.
Yeah, if it says 20%, you say, that's another inch today. So I'm with you. I think that's true. I think that there's a lot of rain, and this year it's been pretty wet pattern. So I sort of am expecting that. I know that Matt Dixon has talked a bunch about. The fact that our windows are getting smaller, and it does feel a little more urgent. Yeah. Now, some people seem to be able to be very calm about it, but we live under a slight level of anxiety for most hay season, which is okay. It is what it is. And you just constantly are checking your phone to see what the weather's doing.
And looking at I'm looking, it's like, what's happening in Missouri, what's happening in Kansas, where's this front, and cold, warm, what is it?
Yep, exactly. So that's where things are right now. We're in the middle of hay. You're in the middle of hay. And our topic today was going to be our early hay yields, because I think, at least for us personally, our fertilized ground has had excellent yields this year.
Yes, I concur.
So how has your hay yield been? And then talk a little bit about what kind of fertilizer. I know we touched on it earlier, but...
So, we had some where we fertilized early. And so my hay yields, I've been very pleased with one section. It needed a lot of nutrients, but I just gave it urea this past year. And so we gave it urea, though, early March. Mm-hmm. And so that field, we're looking at, and going through cutting it, you knew it was going to be a lot better than all of our other fields. And so I was getting, my big 5x6, two and a half bales per acre essentially. So we were doing as opposed to, so in like a 10-acre field, I'm getting 25 bales, as opposed to we had another field which was relatively unfertilized until we fertilized some with DAP and potash, but it was relatively late. We did this in early May.
Yeah.
And so that field we got, for 25 acres, we got about 25 bales, 23 bales.
So about less than half of the hay that you would have gotten out of the fertilized field.
Yeah, and so and the one we did in May was too late, but I was like, well, it was going to need some love, and we saw it in early March, but it was like, I will hold off and see how everything's looking this year.
Yeah. And
so we saw in May, it's like, it's definitely going to need some love if we're going to get anything out of this field to make it worth cutting.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple stories for you. So the field we did in late April got fertilized, looked good, and we went to bale it, and we were like, it's not as thick as we thought it was. I wonder what's going on. This back half of the field's really not doing what it should be.
Huh.
And lo and behold, my husband's out there finishing up baling the hay, and all of a sudden the cows come creeping through the fence from the neighbor's farm, and we're like, well, now we know why we don't have the yields on half of it. It's because the cows have been coming through the water gap
and creep grazing
our field, our hay field all winter. No wonder half of it's only performing and the other half isn't. The half that we can see all the time doing great, the half we can't see, the cows have been eating. So now that that's fixed, it looks much better for our second cutting. We reapplied fertilizer for exactly that reason, because we were like, we got to really push this ground now that we know it's been not overgrazed, but grazed more than it should have been.
Right.
And then on top of that, we then have land that we bale on shares with a neighbor. So we both put in money for fertilizer, and then we both get a portion of the hay. This year, we went ahead and did 100 pounds of urea and 100 pounds of potash.
Okay.
It didn't actually need phosphorus, so we didn't put any DAP down. That ground has done excellent. We've had great yields. We've had, I would say comfortably, we've been hitting about 3 tons to the acre on our first cut, which some years 3 tons is all you get for the whole year. So we're in excellent shape that we're at that point off of first cutting. The one area we have that we bale, but it's a sort of a rockier area. It's not great ground. We end up driving through it a lot. We don't fertilize that. It's a narrower field. Whereas in the areas that have been fertilized, we're seeing like 3 tons. And we do 4x5 bales. So that's 6-7 bales to the acre.
Wow. That's pretty good. Yeah.
It's pretty good. Yeah. I think we averaged a little over 7 in the big field, and in the front, it's 12 acres, and we were at 40 some bales. So, I mean that's a pretty decent number. The field that doesn't have that is still about 5 acres, and we only got 10 bales off of it, so 2 bales to the acre. So about a third of what we would have gotten out of our fertilized.
Okay.
Which, is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. You have to make a decision at some point about how effective. I think fertilizing it might not be a bad option, but I also recognize that is land that is maybe marginal, and that the yield we would have gotten, even if we'd fertilized it, still wouldn't have pushed it as high as the higher quality fields that we did fertilize. So there's a balance, because like when we say, is the response completely due to the fertilizer? No, but I think a lot of it is due to the fertilizer this year. Between the rain coming at these regular intervals and the application of nutrients, we saw some real benefits this year. We've also seen this year a resurgence of clover in our fields.
Huh.
I don't know if you have noticed clover in your fields.
It has been a clover year for a lot of them, because we haven't put down any seed or anything, but it has been a clover year for a lot of our fields, surprisingly. Yeah,
when I ask the forage folks, they say that clover will sit in the seed bed. It'll sit in there for more than a decade.
Oh.
So if there's been clover in the past and you have the right conditions, that clover will reemerge And we've found that in spots where we've tried to kill and replant, like a summer annual or a what do they call them? The blue stems.
Big blue stem, your warm season grasses.
Your warm season,
Yeah.
yep, perennials. All of those, we've tried to plant a few of those things, and every time we do that, I find that we have the clover bounces right back out of the ground on a good year. It doesn't matter how many times it got sprayed in the year or two before that. It's like it has a vengeance. But it's so good for the soil,
Yes.
for the soil health. My mother-in-law has bees. It's good for us to have clover for the bees. They like the white clover, but the red clover is what tends to give us the volume in the hay.
Yes.
The crimsons. So a little bit of everything going on. But those clovers really jumped this year. Now, that's great for us. It's good for the cattle. It puts a little bit more nitrogen into the hay. If you're a horse person and you don't want that, it's a tough year. This is a year where if you are promising someone a clean crop with no clover,
It'd be hard to deliver.
you're going to be struggling to deliver it. We, in fact, have a few bales, not very many, left over from last year. And one or two people that we know are pretty sensitive, that they have some pretty sensitive horses. And so we basically told them, you should just buy last year's hay. Just buy it from us now.
Yeah.
We'll sell it to you. We'll help you get it stored up in one of your barns, but just take the hay, because we can't guarantee at this point, the way the clover stand is, that we will get any hay that you're going to be happy with for the very, very specific horses that need
to have
just a grass with no clover, no legume in it. So
okay. And what about your other fields? Like, how do they?
Everything that we've done that's been fertilized has given us at least 6 bales to the acre.
Okay, so yeah, you're getting like 3 of the bigger bales.
Yeah,
per
so
acre,
that would be
essentially.
like 3 big bales. I don't have a lot of unfertilized hay because we were so... I know for a lot of people they ran out of hay, and we did not run out of hay. We never run out of hay because we have...
The hay business.
We
and
have a
kinda-
business, and it requires us to have hay on hand. But we have been very intentional about fertilizing this year because we've been so tight the last 2 years.
Yes.
And I think this year it's paying off. Like, some years you put all that money into fertilizer and you go, is this really going to give us the return that we need? And it doesn't. I mean, last year we put fertilizer onto things and there was no return with that. And there wasn't water.
Yeah.
So it was just what it was. At least not water at the right times in the growing cycle. So
yeah.
but this year it's clearly paying off.
Yeah, ours we had done, like the ones we fertilized, especially that urea field, or that one small field where we put 100 pounds urea. It probably cost us, just kind of doing some pencil math here real quick, $15 per bale for additional bale. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, that's really not that bad. We've calculated our cost before for the cost for cutting the field and the cost for raking a field are pretty much the same.
Yep.
And so if we can take it from a lower yield point, we actually reduce our cost, like per bale, equipment cost per bale, from $28 down to about $6 if we increase our yield.
Yep.
So our equipment cost per bale really decreases, and then we just have a fixed cost. We assume about $10 to $14 per bale for just baling it.
Yep. And then the fertilizer is what it is. But
It's what it is, yeah.
I'm with you, though. I would agree with that. We've always assumed that we have a little under $15 in when we have 100 pounds of urea and 100 pounds of potash.
Yep.
And those are smaller bales. Our bales are 4x5, so they're half the size or a little bit less than your bales. Yours are probably a little over a ton. I assume ours are about 900 when they bale, sometimes 850. So
Yeah.
I use 850 for my calculation, but it varies based upon how the swath gets through the baler and stuff.
Yeah. It's,
All kinds of things.
there's a lot of variables for the bale density.
Bale density is another question for another day. But with the clover in there, I figure we sit probably closer to the 900 pound number. Anyway, that is all to say that I would totally buy that number at $14, $15 for the fertilizer, because I assume I have that much in fertilizer in bales of hay as well.
Yeah. And so that's what we've seen in the past. And so you're with those, we're hopefully buying that additional hay production.
Yeah, it's exactly right. If you think if we think we're more than doubling our hay off of a field by fertilizing it, then it's pretty easy to spend. That $15 a bale is a pretty cheap. And like you said, the cost to actually run the equipment across the field is not that different regardless of how many bales you get.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost of twine on the bales might be a little different on the baling side, but the cutting, the raking, and we go over with the tedder too. So we go over the field 3 times. Now we will use a pretty light tractor to ted, and we'll try and use a lighter weight tractor to rake as well, because we're trying to save fuel cost on those two parts of the process. But
yeah, because it's horsepower, as horsepower increases, fuel usage increases. It's
exactly.
Just a simple.
So I like to say that I like to use tractors that sip fuel instead of gurgle it. But either way, it is a balancing act. But you're right. If you can get more bales off, the cost per bale to cover the field, to cut, rake, ted, all of those, even bale.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a little bit longer. The more bales you have, the more times you have to kick out bales, the longer you run but the total cost to cover the field is what it is, because there's still the same number of rows in most cases. Sometimes you can do 10 wheels on a V-rake instead of 8 if you're in thinner stuff, but rarely do you double rake.
Yes.
I mean, if you're in a position where you're having to take a V-rake and rake 2 V-rakes together to get enough in a swath, it means that you have spent a lot of time and money for not many bales.
For raking, yeah.
In general, you just have a cost associated with running across the field with any of them. So
our current strategy is, so we just completed that first cut. We got some more rain predicted this weekend, so we're trying to get a win-win scenario. So if it rains, we're hopefully getting out there maybe this weekend over those same fields, throwing down 100 pounds of urea. Yeah. So we have the DAP that's already out there on some of those fields, hoping that it kicks in about now. The DAP and potash.
Yep.
Throw some urea down, hoping to get a good, if it's continuing to rain, a good growth
for a second
cutting potentially.
Yeah. I think that's good. We have a little more hay also. I guess we're sort of now going into what we're working on for the next week. But for us, our goal is to finish cutting a number of things. It looks like it's going to open up next week. So if hay fever was here 2 weeks ago, hay fever might be here again next week. It does look like a promising week for hay, so we'll try and get that.
Yeah, our goal is, if we knock out this upcoming, our plan for the next go around, if we can knock out pretty much our other farm, we'll pretty much be done with our first cutting, potentially.
We have a couple spots, but the goal would be if the window is wide enough to take the remainder of first cutting out.
Yes.
And then turn around and get second cutting on the field that got cut in April.
Okay.
So if we could get second cutting on one of the fields done by the middle of June, that would be, it would almost be a miracle, actually, to be 100% honest. Around here, the way windows fall, it's challenging to get that much hay up and cut by the middle of June.
Up and cut and moved. So we got ours cut, but it's still out there. I'm like, we're still down a tractor. It just went back to the shop. The one tractor went back to the shop, went to a different shop this time. It's gone. This is the third one. I was like, I thought I was at 2 strikes you're out, but now I got overruled and it's 3 strikes we're out.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking after this one, I was like, whatever happens, we're gonna have to, or we're probably thinking about getting a
different tractor.
Yeah. Just even over the summer, I was like, looked at the cost to rent. I was like, I don't think we can probably just buy one and be better off.
Yeah. I think that's fair that you have to figure out the cost and the value, but being down a tractor in hay season is really difficult. We got all of our hay. We have a family that helps, but we got all of our hay baled and in the barn on Friday before the rain came in.
And for us, it's frustrating because we know if we had the other tractor, we could have somebody else out there moving bales. And we were actually down a person too. So one brother, he had to go to Mexico for something. For work. He had to go to Mexico for work. Well, I don't know what specifically, but
don't know where, don't know what. Just know he wasn't in town.
He wasn't in town. He made it back safe and sound. We're happy about that. But it's like, we were kind of down a man, down a tractor. We were just struggling.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I will say about leaving hay in fields is that if we don't push and get it done right when the hay gets cut, it feels like it's not urgent ever again. Once it's been rained on outside, it's much harder to motivate yourself to like race to get it in.
Yeah.
And that is just the nature of the beast. Like that is a little trickier to do when that happens. So everyone has to sort of find their own balance. But we were lucky that we had the manpower and the tractors and the equipment. I mean, we've worked to set ourselves up to do it, but it is a full-on endeavor to get all that hay in that fast. So
Yes.
I think that's probably a pretty good summary of where we are in terms of hay. Maybe when we come, maybe in July or sometime around there, we can talk about how the remainder of first cutting went. I'm actually curious to see if you have more fields that are fertilized and unfertilized, how they compare.
We'll see, because we had a couple that were unfertilized, and I could tell that the yield was off.
Yep.
In them. I can't remember the exact bale numbers, but just because they're adjacent to where we're doing some of the fencing work,
Yep.
and knowing that we're going to be either adjacent to it or running with equipment by it and through it,
Yep.
we decided, there's no need to fertilize if we're going to be doing a
Tearing
lot
up the
of tearing
ground.
up the ground. Tearing
Yeah.
up it doesn't make a lot of sense to fertilize there.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to see how this fertilizer plays out sort of in later first cutting and in second cutting hay too, because I think for right now it's very apparent how productive the fields that were fertilized have been. Mm-hmm. And I can see it with some of the neighbors that don't fertilize their fields, that they are not showing the type of lush grass stands, and they're not going to get the yields. But there are other places that look really good, so I'm actually very curious to hear from other people to see how fertilizer's been impacting.
Because we've had all the fences taking out the cows, so like one section of it is fenced rather well. Like we've had the cows on, but it's been fertilized well. The cows on the 45 acres, 17 acres, 45 cows, and we've had them on there for about a month. And I pulled them off probably last week. I'm getting ready to throw them back on. But it's within that 17 acres, we got about 3 or 4 rotations.
So the earliest rotations are ready to go back onto again.
Yep.
That's pretty productive.
And so we hit it again. We hit that again with
more nitrogen. Yeah, you almost have to just keep pushing it, especially when you're limited on space, just to keep it
limited on space and just getting everything else. It's kind of been in limbo. So it was like, okay, until we get these fences up, we have to push this section hard.
Yeah,
to kind of make up for the other stuff's been kind of not taken permanently out of production, but taken out of usage.
Right. Well, that's a busy farm you've got there, Josh. You've got lots going on. I'm always, fencing is one of those tasks that a lot of people hire out, and I know exactly why they do it. And at times we hire parts of our fencing out, but also there's benefit in doing it yourself. It's just a big time sink that in the summer, on top of hay and rotations and all of the other things that have to happen.
And it is a huge time sink. We can, we'll say, quote unquote, save $2 a foot, but there's a lot of time that goes into it.
Yeah.
But if we can get it up, I think we've got the process down at this point.
Yeah.
Like streamlined as much as we can, even though we're down a tractor that would be rather helpful. That's the one we use to stretch the fence, because it has a loader we have it set up, our traditional setup we can't quite utilize, so.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, I brought my stretchers for you to borrow this weekend, so you can use my fixed mount high tensile stretcher.
Yeah, and they do work well.
And get the job done.
Yeah, traditionally we use a tractor, we'll use a manual method.
I honestly, for a long pull like you're doing, I think that you're going to be very happy to stretch to the middle with the stretchers. I think that's probably actually the correct decision.
And it's the way you're supposed to do it.
Keep tension the whole way. I don't think on a short run, I don't think it matters if you pull to the end or to the middle, but on a long run like that, pulling to the middle really keeps everything more uniform, which is good. So,
but that's our goal, is to kind of knock those braces out, and then get one fence done, get one victory, and then
you got to start somewhere. If you get one, you'll be motivated for the next.
one. So. Anyway.
With that, we'll end today's podcast, and we'll see you guys with another podcast here shortly.
Take care, everybody.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.